Alright. All right. Today, I will discuss about the job order costing system and the cost accounting cycle. Maybe I will discuss lang maybe until direct labor, no? Kasi medyo mahaba siya in terms of uh, the overhead, no? All right. Shit, nangyari. Lolo ko computer ko ah. All right. Today I will discuss about uh, purpose of cost accounting. So basically, I will discuss about what do you mean of cost accounting, then describe the flow of costs of the job order costing system, and then explain the nature and importance of the job cost sheet. Alright, dami nagkikita. Anyway, in number 4, we will discuss that next meeting. Okay? Ano ba to? So in terms of the overhead rate, at the same time, the entries in terms of job completed, no? And over and under applied. So we will discuss that kasi medyo mahaba siya in terms of discussion. So for me, mas maganda is to just focus more on the direct materials and direct labor and the cost accounting cycle. Okay? All right. So cost accounting system. So basically, we accumulate all the manufacturing costs. So ano bang sinabi sa inyo of the manufacturing costs? And then you assign them to the work in process. At the same time, you assign them to the finished goods and transferred it to the cost of goods sold. And you have now your statement of cost of goods sold. Sige nga. Ano ha, it is only a review, no? Tama ba? Justin, ano bang sinabi sa inyo in terms of the total manufacturing cost in terms of the job order costing system? Justin, Reforma. Alright.
Ay, sir, wait lang po.
Sige lang, no problem.
Sir, pwede wait lang po.
Alright, sige. Katrina Dilieva. Okay. How do you understand in terms of or the definitions of manufacturing cost? Hi, Katrina. Alright,
Sir,
sige. Alright, sige.
sir, yun po yung cost na ginamit sa pag-produce po ng product.
Alright. So you have your very good. No, you have your costs in terms of producing your or manufacturing your product. That's why you have your direct materials, you have your direct labor, at the same time you have your factory overhead. All right. What do you mean of direct materials? 'Di ba? Direct materials are materials which are integral part of the finished product, 'di ba? Materials is basically materials directly traced to the specific product, diba? Direct labor is also the salary, no, of the factory worker, wherein it is directly charged to the specific product, no? How about factory overhead? Diba? You have the factory overhead, you have your indirect materials, and you have your indirect labor. At the same time, you have your other factory overhead. What do you mean of indirect materials? So from the word itself, indirect meaning it is not traced to the specific product. Okay? Indirect labor naman, salaries which are not traced to the specific product, meaning yun yung mga salary of supervisor, salary of plant manager. Diba? So, don't worry, we will discuss further na, no? In terms of the manufacturing cost. Okay? So tama yun, di ba? The materials, direct labor, and the manufacturing overhead will be converted into the finished product. For example, what if you are manufacturing Honda Civic or Honda BRV? You have your materials. Ano yung materials dyan? Yung metal, di ba? Yung salamin, no? Yung gulong are all direct materials. How about the direct labor? Yung mga factory worker na gumagawa ng sasakyan ay direct labor. Tama? How about the factory overhead? Supervisor of that Honda Civic, what else? The plant manager, the janitor in the factory are all indirect labor. Okay? How about indirect materials? Yung mga bolts, yung mga nuts, yung mga nails, and any other materials which are indirectly part of that finished product are indirect materials. Okay? It is part of your factory overhead. All right. How about the other factory overhead? You have your depreciation, you have your rentals. No. So, meaning, direct materials, direct labor, and overhead are all to be converted into the finished product. Correct? Direct materials, direct labor is called prime cost. Why prime cost? Because majority of the costs no are coming from direct materials and direct labor. Okay? How come that direct labor and factory overhead is called conversion cost? Because direct materials and through your direct labor and overhead will be converted into the finished product. Yun yung reason. Okay? But before that, may mga time na bungi-bungi pa, di ba? Yung sasakyan mo, wala pang gulong, wala pang bubong. So, saan mo na siya nilalagay? Sa work in process. Alright. The work in process is basically inventory which are partially completed. Tama? And pag natapos na, it will be transferred to your finished goods. Correct? And then, the finished goods, pag naibenta na, will become part of your cost of goods sold. Alright. Understood? Malinaw ba? Or alam
Yes
niyo na?
po, sir.
Or
Yes po,
alam?
malinaw.
Okay. Review lang to ha. Okay? I think na-discuss na to sa inyo ni Miss Mariel. Okay? Alright. Next. Alright. Next is all about reporting job cost data and under and over apply. So this Monday, I will discuss about the over and under apply. First view, why? Alright. Anyway, sige. Wag na. Explain the characteristics and the purpose of cost accounting. What do you mean of cost accounting? Diba? You measure, you record, you report the product cost. Okay. Sir, bakit po only the product cost? Diba? Go back to our discussion. Hindi pala ako. Go back to your discussion about product cost versus period cost. Ano pagkakaiba ng product cost sa period cost? Sige nga. Yun naman.
Sir,
Okay, sige.
sir, yung product cost po, ito includes yung direct materials, direct labor, pati yung manufacturing overhead. Tapos
Very
yung
good.
period cost naman po, yung mga hindi included sa product cost, yung mga expense po, administrative expense. Yung po, sir.
Very good, Alvan. No? So, your direct materials, your direct labor, and overhead are all part of the product cost. Okay? The general and the admin expenses, at the same time, the selling and marketing expense are all classified as the period cost. Okay? Product cost is also known as inventoriable cost or also known as manufacturing cost. All right. How about your period cost? Period cost is also known as what? Non-manufacturing cost and non-inventoriable cost, meaning it is expense outright. Now, if you have that expenses, it is expense outright. While product cost, capitalizable muna, and then as time goes by, or if it is already sold, will become part of your cost of goods sold. Okay, expense na. So, ganun lang yan. Cost accounting is basically you just measure, you record, and report only the product cost. Why? Because product cost is inventoriable cost or manufacturing cost, while period cost, expense outright. Yun lang. Ganun lang kadali kung bakit tinatawag siya na cost accounting. Alright. In the cost accounting system, very important is that we will follow perpetual inventory system. Sir, ano ang perpetual inventory system? Go back to your senior high. Ano ba ang tinuro sa inyo about perpetual inventory system? Kung na ano niyo pa?
Sir,
Tandaan niyo
ano
pa.
po,
Alright, sige.
sa perpetual inventory system po, every time that there's a purchase,
Okay.
instead of journal of recording purchases, merchandise inventory po
Very
yung
good.
nire-record.
Very
Tsaka
good,
every time
Malaki.
na may sale po, ina-update din po yung cost of goods sold.
Very good. All right. Perpetual inventory system, you record purchases, you record discount, you record purchase return and allowances directly to your merchandise inventory. All right. What else? When you say perpetual inventory system, you will record everything in your book. Okay? And also in the perpetual inventory system, in terms of recording your sales, diba? You debit AR and credit sales. At the same time, you will record your cost of goods sold, debit, and inventory credit. So meaning, in the perpetual inventory system, diba, you are not required to conduct physical inventory count. Unlike in the periodic, no, you are required to conduct inventory count. Why? Because you are required also to prepare statement of cost of goods sold. Diba? Yung beginning inventory plus purchases is equals to TGAS, diba? Minus the ending inventory, you have your cost of goods sold. Okay, very good. Okay. There are two basic types of cost accounting system. You have the job order costing system, and at the same time, you have your process costing system. So we will discuss process costing system as time goes by, diba? All right. But today we will focus more on the job order costing system. All right. Uh, Under the job order costing system, it is assigned not to each job and at the same time assigned to each batch per batch. That's why it is called cost per batch and cost per job. All right. And cost per job and cost per batch. And cost per job rather than the time period. Why time period? O ano to? The time period here is your process costing system. Diba? Ayan. All right. For example, this is your wedding invitation and menus. No? For example, sino bang kakasal sa inyo? Si Jaime kakasal. Yeah? Kanino ba? Anyway. So you have wedding invitation and menus. So for example, you have your invitation and menus. No? The invitation is basically you have the blank ink, you have the typesetting, you have the invitation, you have the volume stack, you have the envelope. So it is called job order number 1. It's in job order number 1. Yung job order number 2 naman is basically your menus, no, in your wedding. Okay. So as you notice, no, in terms of this, you have your direct materials, you have your direct labor, at the same time, you have your factory overhead. Sorry. All right. So ano yung direct materials there? Black ink, typesetting, invitation, the envelope, no, the stock are all direct materials. Yung gumagawa nito is direct labor, and then yung kuryente ng paggamit ito, ink, okay, are all part of factory overhead. So meaning, job order 9501 or job order number 1 is basically you have your total manufacturing cost because you manufactured this menu. Okay? Sorry, this wedding invitation. You also manufactured in terms of the wedding invitation and menu. Okay? Typesetting, yan. So meaning, in terms of the job order costing system, it would depends on job. Okay? So job nila is wedding invitation and job number 2 is all about menus. Okay? Yan. Process costing to be discussed further later na to. Okay? So again, cost accounting system. The objective lang naman of the cost accounting system is to provide unit cost of information. Why? Bakit kailangan sa cost accounting you provide unit cost information? Sige nga. K, kasubuan. Why is it that in terms of the accounting system, you provide unit cost of information? I think hindi na yung answer. Okay. Bakit kailangan mo? Kailangan mo i-record ang cost per unit. Wala si Kay. Alright. Lucino, Janina. Why is it that we need to know the unit cost or provide unit cost information? Pwede naman walang ganun eh. Diba? Ba't kailangan
Sir,
mo?
ayan po, nakalagay na.
Sige nga. Sige. Paano?
For product pricing, cost control, inventory valuation, and
Alright.
financial.
Yes, very good. So, number one is to set up your selling price. Tama ba? If your unit cost is 5 pesos, when you set up your selling price, it should be higher than 5 pesos. Diba? Hindi napaka ano mo naman, no? If you are CPA, if you are accountant, 10 pesos yung ano mo, yung unit cost mo, sinet up mo ng selling price at the cost of 8 pesos, di ba? But kapag naging certified public accountant, if you set up with the lower selling price. All right. And also, the cost control, the inventory valuation, and the FS. So, yun yung mga importante in terms of the unit cost information. Okay. Number two is basically describe the flow cost in a job order costing system. All right. Why we need to have the job order cost flow? I think I discussed already, di ba? Ano ngayon? Your direct materials, your direct labor and overhead in a job order costing system, no, will be converted into the finished product. Okay? Yung iniinom mo na beer, 'di ba? Yung bote ng San Miguelite, yung ingredients, yung water, yung malt, yung barley, no, and corn are the ingredients of beer, are all direct materials, correct? And then yung factory worker are all direct labor. And then yung kuryente, your depreciation, utilities, water, are all factory overhead. Pag yan ay matapos na, yan ay iniinom nyo na San Miguelite. Tama ba? Ano bang gusto? San Miguelite or Red Horse? Or San Mig Apple? Alright. So, yan. Pag yan natapos na, no, will be assigned, sorry, pag yan hindi pa tapos, will become part of your work in process. Correct? Pag natapos na, will become part of your finished goods and eventually transferred to your cost of goods sold. Ganun kadali ang job order cost flow. Alright. Parang ganito lang to, no? You have your manufacturing costs, you have your direct materials, you have your direct labor, and you have your overhead will be assigned first to the work in process. Once completed, will be assigned to finished goods. Pag naibenta na, will become part of your cost of goods sold. Alright, understood? Di ba? Madali lang naman. Okay? Dito umiikot ang ating job order cost flow. Alright. There are two major steps in terms of the flow of cost. You have to accumulate the manufacturing cost. At the same time, you assign the manufacturing cost. Okay? And then manufacturing costs incurred are accumulated in debit by raw materials inventory, factory labor, and all. Don't worry, I will discuss later about the journal entries na. And to be assigned. Oh man. Alright. Sige nga. This is the entry this is the entry, okay? And you have your T account. Sige nga. Number one is purchase of raw materials. What if you purchase raw materials? What is the entry for number one? I'll go back for this. You debit raw materials inventory and you credit what? What if you purchase inventory? Let's say it is on account. So you debit, purchase, raw materials inventory, debit raw materials inventory, and credit accounts payable or cash. All right. What do you mean, sir, of this raw materials inventory? When you say raw materials inventory, no, it contained both direct materials and indirect materials. Okay, tandaan to ha. Pag sinabing raw materials, kasama dito yung direct and indirect materials. Hindi lahat ng materials ay kasama sa raw materials inventory. Okay? Nakasunod ba? Hello?
Yes
Yes
po.
po.
All right. Number two, what if you incur factory labor? For example, nagpasweldo ka. Anong ende sa number two? Go back to number two. So meaning you debit factory labor and you credit, let's say, salaries payable, okay, or cash. Binayaran mo yung factory worker mo ng sahod. Alright. Number three, you incur manufacturing overhead. Anong entry? The entry is debit, manufacturing overhead, and credit various accounts. Alright. No worries. I will give you later on how to compute for the applied factory overhead. Okay? So, later na yan ha, kasi baka malito kayo. Next meeting, I will show you the T account in terms of shortcut on how to record over and under applied factory overhead. All right. Number 4, raw materials are used. Tama ba? Yeah. Number 4, raw materials are used. So, basically, this is raw materials mo. Ano gagawin mo? Will be transferred to your work in process. All right. Sige nga. Nakakasunod ba ako? Hindi. Nasusunod ba? Sige, I will write na lang. Kasi yung iba sa inyo mas gusto ay may PowerPoint. Tama ba? Sorry, may Excel. Andiyan pa kayo? Hello?
Yes po, sir.
Yes, po, sir.
Yes po.
Kala
Yes,
ko
sir. Nakikinig lang po. Opo.
Kala ko inaantok na kayo. Ay, makikita niyo yung grades nila. New. Sorry, paano kaya to? Yan. Alright, kaya niyo ba? Medyo maliit to, di ba? Medyo maliit to, no? Tama? Hello?
Sakto lang po, sir.
Alright. Hindi nakita. Alright, sige. Number 1. Number 1 is you purchase raw material. What is the entry for number 1? What if you purchase your inventory? Sorry. If you purchase your inventory, the entry is debit. Diba? Raw materials, inventory. Alright. Raw materials. Raw materials inventory. How much? 42,000. All right. Raw materials inventory debit, which is 42,000. All right. And your credit here, let's say cash, no? Sabihin natin cash. All right. And credit cash worth 42,000. All right. Next, number 2, incur factory labor. By the way, when you say raw materials inventory, no, kasama dito ang direct, okay? At the same time, your indirect materials. All right. Yan ha, kasama yan ha. All right. So meaning kasama lahat yung direct and indirect materials. All right. Next, number 2, you incur factory labor. What is the entry? The factory labor here is worth 32,000. All right. So, we debit factory labor. Okay. And the cost here is at 32,000. And yung credit here, let's say, cash na, no? Kasi maganda cash dapat kasi pag hindi, mag-resign na kayo. When you say factory labor here, it is you have also your direct, okay, and your indirect labor. So magkahalo yan ha pag sinabing factory labor. All right. Question. Question ba? All right. Next, number 3. Number 3 is Number 3 is what if you incur manufacturing overhead sa number 3? Meaning it is an actual manufacturing overhead. What is the entry here for number 3? Incur manufacturing overhead. So meaning you debit manufacturing overhead. All right. Manufacturing overhead. How much? 13,000. Ano ba yan? 13,800 ba yan? 13,800. Correct? And then, let's say various na lang, no? Various accounts. Why various accounts? Kasi, madami yan, di ba? Pwedeng depreciation, pwedeng utilities payable, di ba? So, I will put na lang various accounts, which is 13,800. Alright. Sorry, tumatawag pa. Alright. Next. Number 4. What if, in terms of 42,000, okay, you will now use it to the production? What is the entry for number 4? What if, ang sabi niya, out of 42,000, or sorry, 30,000 yung 30,000 yung nilipat mo, di ba? So, sabi niya, out of 30,000 as materials to be used, no? 24,000, okay? 24K is your direct materials, and then 6,000 naman is your indirect materials. Yan. Ito ay direct materials, ha? Ito ay indirect materials. Alright. What is the entry for this?
Sir,
Okay.
debit work in process po.
Very good. You debit
Work in
work
process.
in process, which is your direct materials. How much?
24,000 po.
Very good. 24,000. How about your indirect materials?
Sa manufacturing overhead po.
Very good. It is charged to manufacturing overhead. Just copy na lang. Mahirap. Copy. Charged to manufacturing overhead. And the cost here is 6,000. Of course, and it is to be charged to raw materials inventory, which is worth 30,000. So meaning, out of the raw materials inventory, you have 42 and you have 30 as ending, as transferred to your work in process. So meaning you have now 12,000 now. 12,000 na lang is your balance. All right. Next, factory labor is used. So what if in terms of 32,000, okay? So in terms of 32,000, so ang sabi niya, 28,000, no? 28,000 is for direct labor, and then 4,000 naman is for indirect labor. Yan. What is the entry for this? You debit? Where do you debit the direct labor pag charge na sa production? It is
Work in
charged to,
process po.
very good, same. You have your work in process. Madali na pala sa inyo to eh. O, review na lang. You have direct labor. How about your, ito ay indirect materials, di ba? How about the indirect labor? Okay? So it is charged to, again, manufacturing overhead of indirect labor. How much? Ito ay 28,000. Ito ay 4,000. Okay? And then you have your factory labor. Tama? Yes. You have your factory labor. How much is the factory labor? 32,000. Magkano na yung balance ng factory labor? The answer is 0 already. Kasi 32, diba? 32 here and 32. So 0 na. All right, next. Overhead is applied. Oh, what is the entry? Okay lang ba we will end this this PowerPoint now? Kasi I want you to read after this. Kasi after this is ano lang para mas mabilis tayo, no? Okay lang ba? Kasi I have meeting at 7:15. Okay?
Okay lang po.
Next, the overhead applied.
Okay lang po, sir. Okay lang po.
The overhead applied is to be charged. What do you mean of overhead applied? Sige nga.
Sir, estimation lang po siya.
Very good. Estimation. Sir, bakit ang direct materials and direct labor are charged to actual cost? Bakit sir, yung overhead is charged to estimation or estimated overhead? Ano yung reason? Again, in terms of the charging of the factory overhead, how come it is based on estimated amount, not based on the actual? Unlike direct materials and direct labor are all actual expenses. Ano yung reason?
Sir, kasi ano po, malalaman lang po yung actual overhead at the end of the period.
Very good. You will only learn the the overhead, especially the invoices at the end or minsan pa nga after the balance sheet date or after the reporting date. Eh tapos na kayo mag-report. That's why for the meantime, it should be based on estimated amount. All right. Pero as time goes by or if you have now the total balance sheet, now it should be adjusted based on the actual cost. That's why when you have direct materials actual, direct labor actual, and applied factory overhead, it is called normal cost of goods sold. Sige, later, next meeting, we will discuss this about the overhead applied. Sige. Number 6, sige, we will finish everything ha. Overhead is applied. Let's say, look na lang dito ha. Overhead applied is worth 22,400. Meaning, if there's an overhead applied, it is charged to work in process. Okay? To be discussed further next meeting. Ha? You have overhead. How much would be the overhead? The answer is 22,400. All right. What is the credit? Anyone? What is the credit? The credit, if you have applied factory overhead, credit is, take note of this ha. What if you have applied factory overhead? So meaning, your credit here is your manufacturing overhead. Okay, so you have here manufacturing overhead. How much? Same amount, 22,400. Take note of this T account. All right. In terms of the manufacturing overhead, take note all your debit, all right, all your debit, okay, is all your actual. Take note, all your credit here is your applied factory overhead. As you notice here in the overhead section, lahat ng na-debit mo are all actual, correct? But all your credit is your applied factory overhead. That's why in the journal entry, in terms of the applied factory overhead, we credit overhead. But in terms of the actual overhead, we debit manufacturing overhead. Okay, later or Monday, we will discuss bakit ganito sir. Why? What do you think? Because you will compute for the over and under applied factory overhead to be discussed further next meeting. But take note of this formula. When you have your T account in the manufacturing overhead, all your debit is your all actual cost. while your credit is the applied factory overhead. That's why, pag maliit ito or mas mababa to, yan ay may tinatawag na over and under applied. Okay? Understood?
Yes po.
Malinaw ba? Or alam niyo na to? Alam na namin yan, sir.
Malinaw po.
Okay. Sige, to be discussed further, I will give you one example for this. Okay? What if completed goods are recognized? So what is the entry? Ito, madali lang to, di ba? If already finished, so it is charged to finished goods inventory. All right. So how much? 39,000, di ba? And your credit here, work in process. Worth 39,000. All right. What if naibenta na? Out of 39, o lahat pala naibenta. Of course, it will become part of your cost of goods sold. Diba? And you have your finished goods inventory. I will just copy it. And the cost here is 39,000. All right. Understood ba? Naintindihan ba?
Opo.
Yes po.
Any question?
Wala po.
None po.
All right. I will give you this PowerPoint. Just read na lang to. Okay? Just read yung iba dito para at least next meeting I will discuss about the applied factory overhead. Yung dito, yung lahat dito ay all nandito na lahat sa aking discuss. Pero sige, we will discuss everything pa naman. Okay? May meeting na ako ng 7. Ako na sana until 8 tayo but I have meeting, no? Closing pa kami. Alright. Any questions so far? Malinaw ba?
Wala po, sir.
Nag-chat. Yes, I will send the PowerPoint. Okay. Oh, any question?
None po.
Alright. So hopefully you learned today and to be discussed further. Okay lang ba we can extend on Monday ha? Maybe until 8 o'clock tayo. Okay?
Sige lang po,
Sige
sir.
po, sir.
Para at least discuss ko lahat. So if none, thank you. Thank you for hopefully you learned. No? Hopefully you learned from this.
Thank you,
Or
sir.
as part of your
Thank you po,
reflection.
sir.
Alright, sige. Bye-bye.
Thank you po.
Alright.
Bye-bye
Po.
po.
Thank you po,
Yeah,
sir.
bye-bye.
Thank
Alright.
you po.
Alright.
Bye, sir.
Bye-bye.